I just wanted to share a few ways in which you can tell whether you're a slave or whether you're free. These 11 points that I've got here are not, these are not the only things that can be used to enslave someone. There are probably many things that you can think of as well that can result in someone being a slave. And some of you as well might think, well, I'm not going to watch this video because I know I'm not a slave, so I don't need to watch this. Well, and also with the thinking that slavery was abolished in the 1800s, different times in different countries. It's not necessarily true that slavery was totally done away with. The slavery, the transatlantic slavery, yes, was done away with, but slavery actually just morphed. And some of it went underground. So there are different ways in which someone can be a slave. Perhaps the starting point for this video should be establishing what it means to be a slave. I would just say a slave is someone who's not free. And in fact, I'm going to be quoting scripture quite a lot in this video. If we go to Revelation chapter 13, in fact, we're already there. 13, verse 16. As you can see here, it says, and he causes all, talking about the second beast of Revelation 13, he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead. So here we have the words free and bond. This is just King James English for saying all these groups that I mentioned here, including those who are free and those who are not free, in other words, slaves. Okay, and from the word bond, we get the word bondage. Okay, free and bond, those who are free and those who are slaves, or those who are not slaves. So the opposite of being free is being a slave. That's all it means to be a slave. It means you are not free. So I'm pointing out some things which actually deprive us of our freedom as human beings. And of course, that's where we get the word freedom from. We got the word freedom from the word free. And something else I'd like to mention as well is I have read a bit of history, especially American history, and because America as a nation actually has a lot of influence on the world. It has actually been said that when America sneezes, the whole world catches a cold. So in terms of the abolition of slavery in America by the Emancipation Proclamation, which was signed by Abraham Lincoln. I'm trying to think of the dates here. Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to think of the date. And I've got the date here. It was the 1st of January, 1863. That's when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. So this is an executive order that was signed by Abraham Lincoln. This is to do with the ending, the executive order that ended slavery in America. Obviously, that doesn't mean that on that very day slavery ended, because it took a while, for the slaves to be set free, because especially the farmers and anyone who, in quotes, owned slaves in America didn't want to set them free. But over time, they were set free. But the order was actually signed on this date here. And we know that in the UK and in other countries there were other laws that were passed as well to end slavery. So what I wanted to say, why I'm bringing this up, is because it is often thought that slavery ended when these laws were signed. But for instance, in America, we know that the 13th Amendment was signed, which actually made everyone a slave. But the slavery is different, or from that which existed during the time of Abraham Lincoln, and it was different from the transatlantic form of slavery. So if we just go back to that list, I've just yeah, I've got these 11 points here. The one I want to start with, which is one of the most important, I think this one would be second after having the right to life. The next thing that comes after the right to life is freedom of speech, and if you don't have freedom of speech, then you're a slave. Because slaves are not allowed to speak freely; they would be punished for doing so. In fact, I've got a verse that I want to share with you. It's in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 26, verse 2. I won't read all of it. I just want to read this last bit here. Where it says, all the words that I command thee, this was God speaking to Jeremiah when he sent him to preach. All the words that I command thee to speak unto them, diminish not a word. You see here, God gave Jeremiah the freedom of speech. All the words that I command thee to speak unto them. So we get our freedom of speech from God, okay? Not from. It is often thought that we get our freedom of speech or our rights in general from, let's say, from the government, or in America, Americans tend to think they get their freedoms or their rights from the American Constitution. That's not correct. We get our freedoms from God from the time we are born. Okay, we don't even get our freedoms from our parents or from the churches that we go to. We get our freedoms from God. And in fact, I've done a video before talking about where our rights come from, so you can go and have a look at that in your own time. Second one I want to talk about is if you're being told what to do in your home. So if you're an adult and you've moved out from home, whether you're married or not, if you've moved out from home, you are free to do what you want in your own home. And in the scriptures, there are several texts that prove this point. Let me just bring them up on eSword. So this verse, in fact, there are 4 verses that have this kind of same phraseology here. A man shall leave his father and his mother. The first one we come across is Genesis 2:24, and it says, therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave. This word cleave means to be united. I think it's got 2 meanings. Sometimes it can mean to split, or it can mean to unite. Shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And then the next one, where similar words are said, and this was Jesus speaking. Any words that you see in red, especially in the King James Bible, they are words that were spoken by Jesus. Matthew 19, verse 5, and said, for this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they shall twain just means 2, shall be one flesh. So the two shall become one. Mark 10:7, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. Ephesians 5:31, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and shall be joined unto his wife. You see, the word cleave means to join, okay? Be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. I was actually about to go and look up this word in the Strong's Concordance on eSword, but we don't need to do that because it's just been said in a different way here. The word cleave means to join. So what's the point? What is the point being made in all these 4 verses? Four verses which seem to have the same sort of phraseology. A man shall leave his father and mother. What's the sentiment being expressed here is that when a man leaves home, whether he's getting married or whether he's single, is that he's now free and independent. He's not under the rules of his parents. And that would I would apply that would apply to women as well. When a woman leaves a parent's house to go and live in their own home, whether they're married or not, that person is free. No one has got the authority or power to tell that person what to do in their own home. You find that in various cultures around the world, you find that parents continue to try to impose themselves or to exercise authority over their children when their children have moved out. That causes a lot of a conflict. And I have said before in some of my videos that the one thing that causes us as human beings not to get along most of the time is the issue that there's someone in a relationship who's trying to dominate another person. And in fact, I've read lots of books. I've read hundreds of books, and one of the things that I've noticed is that human beings always seem to want to enslave each other, and they do it through various means. And even right now, there are various things which are being done to enslave mankind, whether it be scandemics or this staged war in Iran, the war on terror, or CBDCs, digital IDs, all these things are being done to enslave mankind. That is the ultimate goal of the devil. He wants to enslave mankind, as well as reducing the population and things like that. But I've addressed many of these issues in my other videos. So let's move on to the next thing on our list. I hope this point is clear, that if you're being told what to do in your home, you're not free. You cannot say you're a free man or a free woman when someone else is telling you what to do in your own home. Because when you're in your own home, you can make up your own rules. You can go to bed when you want. You can eat what you want. Without someone else trying to tell you what to do. Because that's the difference between being a child and being in your parents' home and being in your own home. But let's move on to point number 3. If you don't exercise bodily sovereignty, you are not free, you are a slave. Yeah, you cannot say you're free if someone is telling you what you can and cannot put in your own body. And I'm going to make mention of the scamdemic once again, which I've mentioned many times in my videos, because that was a good sign of telling who was free and who was not. It said that about 80% of the world complied with the mandates and all the rules that were connected to the scamdemic, whether it was practicing anti-social distancing and washing hands, and especially wearing a mask, because that's something that was very clear and visible in public. It was easy to see who actually believed in the propaganda associated with the scamdemic, of which I've said many times there was no pandemic. Okay, it was a military exercise run by the Department of Defense, and the two main goals of the scamdemic were population reduction and to get as many people as possible to take the poke, because the poke contained and contains, because there's some people out there who are still taking it. It contains micro bots. Okay, and the thing about that is it's to integrate human beings into the Internet of Things. Okay, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about if you don't exercise bodily sovereignty and someone is telling you what to put in your body. For instance, the poke, whether it be the COVID-19 poke or any other vaccine, you are a slave, because that means you don't have sovereignty over your body. And what do I mean by sovereignty? The right to decide what you can and cannot do with your own body. If someone else is deciding what you can do with your own body, whether what you can eat or what you can drink and what you can inject into your body, if someone else is making those decisions for you, you are a slave. Okay. So number 4, I think there are actually a lot of things I can say about point number 3, but let's just move on to number 4, so I don't take too much time. If you can't choose your own religion, or even leave a religion that you were born into, or a religion that you were introduced to by your parents, if you can't make those decisions, you are a slave. Okay. And I know, for instance, in Islam, it is forbidden to leave Islam. And in some countries are more strict than others. In some countries, if you leave Islam, they will say that you should be killed. Excuse me, because it's like you're an infidel, basically. But everyone has the right to choose their own religion. I may not agree with your religion. Okay, I'm a Christian and I'm a Protestant as well. But if you belong to a different religion to me, that is your choice. Okay, no, basically, no one has the right to choose anyone to become part of a religion that they don't want to be part of. If you can't choose your own religion or your own faith, you are a slave. And if you are in a religion that you're introduced to by your parents, or there's a certain religion that's very dominant in the country where you live, and you can't leave that religion, you are a slave. Okay. Now I know perhaps it's easy for me to say things like this because I'm in Zimbabwe and no one is forcing me to follow any religion, and I know that there are Christians who are actually practicing Christianity secretly for fear of being persecuted. Perhaps I shouldn't be so harsh and be judgmental of them, but because it's not easy sometimes to leave certain religions, but remember I said the opposite of being free is being a slave. If you're not free to leave a religion, then you are a slave. Sometimes it's actually better to leave your parents and your relatives and even your own country, so you can practice your faith. Let's say if you want to be a Christian and you want to leave Islam and be a Christian, the only way to be free is sometimes to leave your own country and to leave all your relatives behind. But I'm saying it's easier said than done. Number 5, if you're in an abusive relationship, whether it's your parents who are abusing you, or abuse between spouses, and abusive relationships actually can extend to your relationship with the authorities in your country. Once again, like what happened during this pandemic, where people were forced or were pressured, I shouldn't say forced because no one was forced to do anything, pressured to do certain things like to wear a mask where you're depriving yourself of oxygen, and to be injected with the poke that contained toxins, and also to take the poke without questioning what were the contents in the poke. All that is slavery. Okay, if you are in an abusive relationship, whether it's physical or verbally abusive, and in an abusive relationship with the authorities, then you are a slave, because all you need to do is just to say no. You just need to say no. Okay. Number 6, if you don't have freedom of travel, once again, like what happened during this pandemic, and this is also happening right now with this staged war with Iran, where they say that oil, the transportation of oil is being disrupted because of the Strait of Hormuz, and basically the oil refinery is being blown up by missiles and bombs and drones, which is leading to the scarcity of fuel, because even fuel has gone up twice now in the past 2 or 3 weeks here in Zimbabwe. It's gone up, and it's continuing to go up in different parts of the world, to the extent that people are being told to stay at home and work from home and not travel in order to save fuel. So you're being deprived of the freedom to travel, which is actually a God-given right. A similar thing happened during this pandemic, where it was said that you're not supposed to travel because you're going to spread a virus which was never proved to exist. In fact, there were, from my research, I found that there were at least up to 200 FOIA requests, and FOIA stands for Freedom of Information Act requests, in which certain individuals who didn't believe there was a pandemic requested information from the authorities to prove that there was a pandemic, and that information was never provided. No one ever proved that there was a pandemic. So yeah, our freedoms were actually restricted during this pandemic, and they're being restricted now. But just so you know, the freedom to travel comes from God. You are allowed to travel and go wherever you want to go. Number 7, if you submit yourself to an authority figure, this can be what is an authority figure? An authority figure is someone that it's commonly thought to have some kind of authority in life, and normally it's figures like pastors, priests, even the Pope, doctors, politicians, and the so-called authority figures in unelected organizations. For instance, the United Nations and the World Health Organization. That when they say something, it's supposed to be binding. So if you submit yourself, this includes teachers, by the way, whether they be in schools and colleges, universities. If you submit yourself to a so-called authority figure, and I would actually go as far as saying, if you worship an authority figure, you're a slave. Okay, so just because someone has got a degree or a PhD, Doctor of Philosophy, it does not mean they know better than everybody else, because all these authority figures actually repeat something that someone else said. Okay, our ultimate authority and our highest authority should be God, not human beings here on this earth. Because if you look at what happened during this pandemic, all these so-called authority figures during this pandemic misled everyone. The churches, the governments, the United Nations, the World Health Organization, the police officers as well, that can be authority figures as well, the doctors, all of them were wrong basically, but they all work together to put pressure on us to follow a certain way of thinking and a certain way of acting and behaving. So don't submit yourself to these authority figures. Submit yourself to God, who doesn't make mistakes and is always right. Number 8, if you work for nothing. Now this is typically thought to be what slavery is. The definition that pops in most people's minds when you talk about slavery is they think when you work for nothing you're a slave. No, all this is slavery. Okay, because you're not free. Difference between a slave and someone who's free. The opposite of being a slave is someone who's free, and the opposite of being free is a slave. Okay, if you work for nothing, you're a slave. And there are places around the world where this actually still goes on. I know that there are places in like China and even in North Korea. I've actually read a book. Perhaps you might want to read it. I'm trying to think of the title. I think it's called Camp 14 or something like that. Escape from Camp 14. I can't remember. I read it a few months ago. I read so many books, sometimes I can't remember what some of them are called. I think it's called Escape from Camp 14, which shows you the harsh conditions that some of the prisoners in the North Korean prison camps live under. But that's slavery, and we know that there are these open air prison camps in China, perhaps in other parts of the world as well. And when I say that someone who works for nothing is a slave, it does not mean they're not. Sometimes they actually they're given food to eat and clothes, but still that's not pay, okay? Because there's actually a text. Yeah, so there are actually two texts that I want to share with you with regards to labor and pay. First one is Luke 10, verse 7. As you can see, it's in red, so that means it was Jesus speaking. But I just want to read for you this part only, the middle part of this verse. That's what's relevant to what we're talking about, to what I'm talking about. It says, "Therefore the laborer is worthy of his hire." Laborer just means worker. A worker is worthy of his pay. This is what this is saying. Okay. Next one we're going to look at is 1 Timothy 5:18. It says, "For the scripture saith, Thou shalt not muzzle the ox that treadeth out the corn, and the laborer is worthy of his reward." So similar words to those that were spoken by Jesus. The laborer, the worker, is worthy of his reward. In other words, his wages or his pay. Okay, you're supposed to get paid when you're working. You shouldn't be working for free. Now, some employers will say, "I'm not paying you because you're not an apprentice and you're learning on the job." Even apprentices get paid. You're supposed to get paid when you're working. Number 9, if you have no choice in who you marry, you are a slave. Okay, you should have the choice to marry who you want. And there is a tendency by certain parents to, in fact, there are certain countries where they have arranged marriages, where especially the bride doesn't get to choose who she marries, and in fact, sometimes they're forced to marry their own cousins. But I also wanted to talk about parents sometimes who, let's say, when their children get married, they actually they'll say they don't approve of their children's spouses. Of course, remember we read those 4 verses that says, "A man shall leave his father and his mother and shall cleave unto his wife." You can marry who you want. Of course, you should marry someone who's got the same beliefs as you. Okay, same values, beliefs, and sometimes even the same faith, so that you get along as much as possible. No one has got the right to force anyone to marry someone they don't want to marry. And if you find yourself in that situation, you're a slave, okay? Number 10, if you are in debt, especially what they call debt slavery, where you are in debt for long periods of times, we're talking of sometimes 30 or more years, there is what's called debt slavery. That's not good. You're not supposed to be, the scriptures actually discourage debt. If we go to Proverbs, the scriptures discourage being in debt. Is it Proverbs 22? Yeah, Proverbs 22 verse 7. The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. The borrower is servant to the lender. Another way of looking at this is the borrower, the one who borrows money, is a slave to the lender. Because, for instance, if you borrow money to buy a house and then you fail to pay your monthly installments, your house can be taken off you. And also, it's just going back to the issue of debt slavery. If you look at America as a nation right now, America is in about 37 trillion worth of debt, which they say can never be paid off. That is debt slavery, and that debt is actually being passed on to the children of all Americans. Okay, that debt can never be paid off, and that was done intentionally because there's what's called fractional reserve banking, where the banks actually just print money and create money out of nothing. That's what some of the presidential assassinations have been about. If you have like Abraham Lincoln, yes, may have been disliked by some Americans because he set the slaves free, but something else that's not really well known about Abraham Lincoln is that he was opposed to central banking, and that's one of the main reasons why he was assassinated as well. But there are many books that have been written about that. Number 11, if you believe man's words instead of God's word, for instance, if you believe in the educational system where they teach you about evolution and the Big Bang and all these false theories, then you are a slave. If you believe politicians, bear in mind that politicians lie every day. Right now this war in Iran, they are trying to justify it in different ways by saying that there would have been an imminent attack from Iran if they hadn't, if the US and Israel hadn't attacked Iran. This is just a slightly different way of telling the same lie that was told about the reason for attacking Iraq. Okay, politicians were also involved in the propaganda behind this pandemic. That all turned out to be a lie. Yeah, I addressed this. This is linked to the educational system as well, to get you away from believing in God. Okay, believe the media and their propaganda. You are a slave. So yeah, all these things. There may be other things I've missed out as well that you can think of that basically lead to someone being a slave. And there are some things which are being done right now, CBDCs, not CBDA. CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. These will have, this is money, in quotes, money, digital money, basically, that will come with conditions. For instance, the word I was thinking of is program. It can be programmed so that it actually expires, which means that you can't save to put a deposit on a house. And there are some things that you won't be able to buy, for instance, because it will be linked to you as an individual. So if you want to buy something that's deemed not healthy for you, you won't be able to buy that. It will come with lots of controls on it. Digital IDs, okay, which I think everyone knows about these, and social credit scores, like what they have in China. I think there's an app called WeChat, which is used quite a lot in China, as well as other apps as well, which kind of restrict the freedoms of the Chinese. All this is coming on the whole world. So this will lead to the further enslavement of mankind. So why am I sharing all this? Just to say, avoid all this as much as you can if you want to be free. Okay, so that's what I wanted to share in this video. You can agree or disagree with me. It's fine. But this is what I've learned, and through my research and through what God has told me, you find that all these things I've mentioned here, the freedoms that our God-given rights, all these things take away our God-given rights. So obviously, it's not making us free. I've also got and I've said as well in the past, not necessarily on video, but my belief is that anything that's not making you free is not from God; it's from the devil. Okay, that's a simplified way of differentiating what makes you free and what makes you a slave. If something is not making you free, it's not from God. Okay, God wants us to be free. Like God actually cares about our personal well-being. Let me just finish actually by sharing with you one of my favorite texts from the book of Jeremiah, chapter 29, verse 11. Jeremiah 29, verse 11. It says, "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end." So God wants us to have peace and not evil. Okay, He wants us to have peace. So that's what I wanted to share in this video. Hopefully it made sense to you, and thank you for watching the video, and have a good day.